Welcome back, everybody. My name is Joshua Onimus, and today we're going to be talking about filmmaker Kevin Smith. But before we get started, please do me a favor and like, share, comment, and subscribe on the video so you never miss an upload. After I viewed Clerks for the very first time, when it was over, it felt like I had discovered the voice of my generation, much like sitting down and hearing Nirvana sing Smells Like Teen Spirit for the first time. Dante, Randal, Veronica, Caitlin, Jay, and Silent Bob. Man, I felt like I knew these people intimately. The conversations they had felt like conversations I had with my friends. And not just the pop culture and the Star Wars references either. There was a brutal honesty to the dialogue. Friends talk like this when they don't have a filter and they hold nothing back. Now, you would think that over the course of time, that Clerks would become dated and even a little embarrassing, but the funny thing about Clerks is that it's still a timeless movie. These are feelings and journeys that we all take, wondering whether we can find that special thing that gives our lives meaning. I can't speak to other people's experiences with Clerks, but to me, it gave a voice to all those emotions and thoughts that I had about where I was at that moment. And watching it now, it isn't just nostalgia for nostalgia's sake, but it's a snapshot in time that feels universal. I felt like Smith and me, we were walking down the same road. In Clerks 2, it has our characters a bit older, but not so much wiser. And again, I felt right into that movie because it felt like a mirror into my own life. If there's a constant in those Clerks films, it's the sense that a turn was missed somewhere, that our quietly desperate lives would have played out differently had we had the courage to make the hard choices. With Clerks 2, it managed to capture a moment in time that felt poignant for me, even if it's not on the level of the first film. And while Smith may have strayed from the path here and there, it still felt like Smith and I were going in the same direction. However, by the third outing, I had realized that since Clerks 2, not a single film of Kevin's has actually been good in my personal opinion. I'd usually still view them, but would often find myself puzzled that this was the same filmmaker that made so many films I enjoyed years earlier. As if he was through with our journey and he was beginning anew. Red State, Zack and Miri Make a Porno, a film similarly about making a movie, Tusk and Yoga Hosiers, well, they all felt like they were coming from a place of complacency. And dare I say, laziness, and less so from inspiration. On a side note, though, Tusk does have some inspired cinematography, and Justin Long works overtime to deliver something compelling at the very least with what he has. And I saw Jay and Silent Bob Reboot, and while I enjoyed seeing those characters again for the first time in years, especially Holden's show-stopping Chasing Amy monologue in the final act, I found that his evolution as a filmmaker was one of stitching comedic vignettes together with basic film composition, lazy writing, and, a few rare moments of exception. Enter Clerks III, a film that Kevin Smith has threatened us with since the last one wrapped and hit cinemas 16 years later. In this film, Randal, who survived a massive heart attack, enlists his friends and fellow clerks, Dante, Elias, Jay, and Silent Bob, to make a movie about their lives at the Quickstop convenience store that started it all. Now, I won't dive too much into spoilers. I didn't initially fall into the groove of the film, albeit it has an incredible choice for music to begin the film with. The film falls back on many of the things that began to creep into the film's post-Clerks 2. I was getting nervous. Was I in for a nostalgic field trip through Kevin's filmography for the duration of this picture? Well, yes and no. This film absolutely mines every piece of nostalgia that can be found in Kevin's View Askeniverse with absolute disregard for how self-indulgent it all feels. He fills the frame to the brim with old friends, comic book men, and choice cameos of all types. It's a victory lap for the film that launched his whole career. He mimics nearly every aspect of his own experience making Clerks as Randal, taking on directing a film called Inconvenience, a callback to the fact that Kevin initially named his first Clerks draft that. As the overload of nostalgia is hitting, I feel myself turning on Kevin as I've done with prior attempts to recapture my love of his work. But what happens next would change how I saw these films. Moreover, how I viewed Clerks III, and how it acts as a finale to this Jersey Trilogy by the Garden State native. In the final act of the film, it brings the emotion that was sprinkled through the plot to a crescendo. Dante has had a hard time since 2006, and while these reflections on these last few difficult years could have been too cloying and sweet for this series, Smith handles them with great control and awareness. O'Halloran is asked to shoulder much of the emotional weight here, as we see him worrying about losing his best friend, and pondering the losses he's had in his past, and he definitely pulls these moments off. Similarly, Jeff Anderson is at his all-time best as we finally see the potential that he's always had shining through as he gives his all towards something. As these films have gone on, both O'Halloran and Anderson have been asked to handle more than one could have expected after Clerks, but both have been able to meet the challenges thrown at them time and time again. I was thoroughly impressed. I realized I did not hate Clerks III. I loved it. Even what came before the moments I felt were cliched or lazy. Suddenly, in hindsight, I saw more reflections of Dante and Randal's life in my own again. Some things do not change. Age is a son of a bitch. Our unhappiness with our stations in life, and by God, that a truly good friend is hard to come by, so appreciate the good ones. Dante emoted the way I do in my own stress. Randal covered his pain with humor. Elias wants to have a group of friends to belong to. I mean, in the end, the lesson rang with me in my concurrent age with this film just as Clerks II had before. It just took some time to get there. The themes mentioned are ones we all go through from graduation to grave. I felt like I could let go of aging actors performing their old characters. Just turned into watching people I felt like I knew 16 years later in the end. Marilyn Gigliotti specifically feels like a human being who has lived a real human life since Clerks. Her performance absolutely rocked. Jay and Silent Bob still make me smile as Kevin Smith finds new ways to utilize Jason Mewes' growing acting prowess. It left me feeling complete by the credits. I don't need to see any more from these two. I can ignore the stumbles that Kevin took along the way to Clerks III, because now, like Dante and Randal, my story's over. That story being with Kevin Smith. Just as I was ready to write him off, Clerks III wrote me off instead, assuring me that even if I don't see another film of his I love, Kevin let me grow up in whole, like the Before Sunrise trilogy from Richard Linklater before, with these two characters through the decades together. And that, my friends, is Kevin Smith. Or how I learned to stop hating his recent films and love Clerks III. Thank you for watching.